Hello everybody, welcome back to Commonwealth Flipper. We've been working in that shed. I've been selling live today, 2 shows today. We've been going crazy over there and on eBay. Y'all, I cannot wait to show you the numbers for May at the end of May, or probably won't show you till June. Sales have been amazing, except for today. There's nothing. It's 1:30 in the afternoon at this point, and I don't have an eBay sale. And so I looked and I'm like, you know what? I haven't been listing that much. So we're gonna get to that today, but I gotta show you all these sales today before we get there, and the puppies. What are you doing over there? Let's go check it out. The topic today is actually gonna be about something I'm pretty passionate about. You know what? I started over here for a reason. People ask me about these all the time. They're like, they're not listed, they're not listed. They should be listed now. And it all stems from a video that I saw. I'm like, is this guy talking about me? Because he was being very critical of a lot of things that I often say about a particular topic. And maybe it's just my ego thinking people are talking about me, and that's not a good thing. But I want to talk about it today because I don't think that the advice that this person gave in regards to this topic is that good, to be honest with you. It is the popular opinion, but I don't agree with it at all. But I do have some things to pick, and yesterday as well, you'll see a little bit in this video from yesterday, which is not a day I normally pick or film. And then we have 17 more things going out today, and no sales today, which is really weird, but you know, whatever. Pillowcase, Take Me Out to the Ball Game, vintage Major League Baseball 1996. This was listed forever and did not sell, but it finally did sell for $12.74 on 25% off discount plus shipping. Now, to be honest with you here, part of the problem is me. I care way too much. It's not that I care too much about what people think about me. It's that I want people to think the way they think about me based on the right information, if that makes any sense. And I also watch way too much reselling content. I love it. I'm probably one of the few creators out there who consumes more than I actually produce. I love reselling content, always have. I love to learn. I just like, I was made for this. I just love reselling. I'm getting a ladder here because these two are too tall for me. Ironically, these two things were listed up here separately, but they're in my shed together. And they're both Care Bears. And I don't know if this is a viewer or not, to be honest with you, because there was no message. And they're two similar type items. So, you know, people do that sometimes to save, you know, bundle on shipping or whatever. But we got a Care Bear here. Let me get the listing for you, because this has a title to it and I want to get it right. This is the Rainbow Roller Cloud Car Vehicle. And it's a Love-A-Lot, I think, is the name of this one right here, and it is a vintage one as well. $29 and change. $29.41. That's what they sold for together. Miriam Bottom. I don't know, Miriam, if you are a viewer or not, but if you are, thank you, and I think you'll enjoy those too. I've liked them sitting here for a long time. And honestly, I don't know this person. This person probably doesn't know who I am either, so I'm keeping that part of it out of it, but I just thought I'd throw that in there to get you a glimpse into my troubled mind. But I am going to address the topic, because the topic is going to be debt. And it is, and I'm talking about debt in a reselling business, and when is it appropriate and when is it not. And I tell you what, I don't know if I can get this out of here. I can get this one out of here, and I'm not even sure that's the right one. I got to check my listing. 2 G.I. Joe vehicles sold right here for pretty decent money to the same person. I should probably give a thank you to this for Terry. I don't think that Terry is a viewer either, but I'm going to say thank you just in case, because, you know, when people buy 2 things, sometimes they are, but they're both G.I. Joe things. All right, it wasn't that one. I finagled it out of there. G.I. Joe Cobra Maggot. Is that right? A Real American Hero action figure vehicle, 1987. One of them sold on 25% off. The other one, they might both have sold on 25% off. $44.41 for these two, plus shipping. I got to show you this. We have been listing some new things coming in. Check this thing out. I paid way up for this. You'll see this on Commonwealth Picker video here soon. I just loved it. I'm like, I cannot resist. I'm not leaving it behind. Have not listed it yet. It is in draft, so I'm going to figure out a price for it. Elvis World Championship attendance record, Las Vegas, Nevada. I love that thing. I do have a bunch to pick, but I do want to get into this topic as well. So let's start right now and I'll give it a little context to it. So I love this topic. It's important to me. There's some personal reasons that I'm not going to get into at this point, but I see so many resellers out there that fail because they jump in they jump in way too quickly. The biggest part of it that I see that people fail at is the folks that say, I'm buying now because I'm going to sell in the future. So I'm out there picking. Whew, that's a big red flag for some folks. It's really, really important to start selling before you start buying. That's why, the old cliche, just sell the stuff in your house first. It really is it's a cliche for a reason, right? You hear that out there. It is good advice. Start selling before you start buying. I remember the very first thing I sold, I didn't even buy it. It was free. I've told the story before. I'll tell it again for the new folks out there. I was a teacher and I was tasked with the job. I was a rookie teacher, freshman teacher, if you will. And I was tasked with the job of cleaning out the history department because everybody else is, 1 year from retirement and I'm the young kid, and the call comes from on high. You got to clean this out. We were doing, I don't know, they were going to do a reconstruction of different places and stuff. And so I got the job of getting rid of all the old stuff. A lot of this stuff predated my era when I was in school many, many moons ago. And so I basically pulled it all out of there. And it's stuff that was clearly junk, I threw it in the garbage. Stuff that wasn't clearly junk, I would send an email out and say, all right, here's what's here. If anybody wants this, come and get it. What do you want me to do with this? And most people were like, get rid of it. There was one teacher in there that didn't want to get rid of anything. I'm like, okay, I'll put it in your room. They're like, oh, all right, just get rid of it. So I found some stuff in there. I'm not going to get into all the details of what I found, and some of it was pretty good. Discarded books from the library that were discarded in the 50s that were actually from the turn of the century. I think one was 1897. And stuff like that I ended up selling. But the very first thing I saw was the Nixon-Kennedy debates on tape, on cassette tape. This is in probably 2002. And I started 2001, actually. 2001 school year. And that was my first year teaching. And I looked it up on this new to me, this eBay thing. It was probably 2000. And I'm like, man, these things sell for like $13. And there's an entire box full of them. I'm like, And so I went around, make sure to do diligence. I'm like, nobody wants these right now. Like, no, we're not going to use that anymore. And I started to sell them one at a time. And I was selling stuff that I didn't put a dime into. And then I started to ramp it up from there. So there was no debt in the process of starting reselling. I think that's crazy. And that's on a micro scale. I think most people agree with that. There's not much doubt about that. But we'll get into the macro scale. And I still disagree with loading up on any kind of debt, almost any kind of debt. I do have some exceptions, and I'll tell a story that I was on the Reseller Locker Room podcast. I talk a little bit about it. This is an old Uniden right here, Pro 41HH. These sell well all the time. Every time I pick them up, they sell pretty quickly too. This one sold for $34.95 plus shipping. And before I get into the macro side of the topic, and I always want your opinion down here, especially those who have started out, those who have been doing it a long time. When I go through this whole thing, I really do want your opinion because I don't think I'm in the minority here. I really don't, but I could be wrong. So I've been criticized before about, telling people if you're starting to resell, go buy a thermal printer, or go buy this, or buy from American Bubble Boy Bubble Wrap, or get your 3 and, whatever. And they're like, don't tell people to do that. Don't tell them to get... First of all, I don't tell new people to do that. I never have. Matter of fact, I wouldn't personally buy anything except for a scale to start with. That's the only purchase I would make. And obviously you got to go buy a little bit of tape and you don't have to buy boxes. I wouldn't even buy boxes at the very beginning. I think eventually if you get big enough and there's not an easy supply that doesn't take a lot of time, some of you have easy supplies of boxes because of where you work or something. So there's always exceptions to the rule. But other than a scale, I don't think I'd buy a darn thing. I mean, most people, when they're starting, you know, you probably have a little packing material from a order you got or somebody's birthday or something that got dropped off. You know, you might need a little bubble wrap or something like that and some tape, obviously. So I'm hoping that this is, I'm not sure it's in here. I don't remember where the heck I put this. It's a baseball. And I do not remember. It would normally go in the sports bin here, but I don't think I put it in there. This has got a cool story to it, too. I remembered when I was back there looking. I knew I didn't put it in there. Put it right here because these sell pretty quick usually. This is Official Ball Pecos League. And I got a cool story about this too. I guess I'll do an interlude and get back to the Jet story in a second. That is essentially Major League Baseball. It's minor league baseball. But this is an independent league. Pecos League. And the Pecos League is defunct. And they had different teams that played in the Pecos League. And a lot of them would have their own balls. Well, they went out of business. And so when they did, I was a baseball coach, and I wanted to get quality baseballs. And a lot of people sold those things off. Those clubs sold those things off in massive quantities. And I bought them in massive quantities because they're high-quality baseballs. My plan was to use them for my baseball team because it was cheaper than buying, you know, practice balls that weren't nearly as good. But once I figured out that those balls were now becoming collector's balls, and certainly some of the different teams had their own baseballs too. It's an independent league is what it was. Then I saw some of them like, man, those are going for like $15 to $20 each ball. So I bought those balls from the team that I had used team money to buy. And then I bought other balls to use because I'm like, man, I can make a bunch of money on these things right here. And that's what I did for a long time. Matter of fact, you probably saw it if you watched this on the Commonwealth Picker channel when this flipper videos used to be over there 5.5 years ago. No, actually, you know what? May 19th, y'all. May 19th was in 2019 is the first video I ever made. That's an anniversary right here. Okay. Anyway, those early videos, I would sell those balls all the time. It was a multi-quantity listing, and I was making like $10 a pop. And they would sell all the time as singles, and we made a bunch of money on those. I'm going to stay off course for just a second because this kind of ties into the topic a little bit. But let me show you this one first. This is a camera, a little coarse leather camera case. I think it's Swedish or something, or German. I can't remember where the heck it was from. But this is the kind of stuff at a dollar sale you pick up, and you hope you get lucky. And this one wasn't too lucky, but it was lucky enough. $15, $14.92. Shipping. So once I figured out this eBay thing, you know, and like I said, I think it's 2000. I mean, I was in college, obviously. I graduated in 95 from high school and working to get a degree and all that stuff. Once I figured that out, and then I became the head baseball coach at the school I taught at. And I was selling on eBay, and then, you know, I would go to purchase for my team. You know, we had budgets, and I'd try to pinch pennies to make sure that the money we spent, baseballs in particular, are extremely expensive. And, you know, you're going to have 3 teams, you know, varsity, JV, middle school team that I was in charge of too. And I wanted to pinch pennies because we were fundraising all the time. I wanted to spend that money well, which kind of goes to the debt thing and my mindset from growing up. Because we didn't have much money when I was growing up. And I started to look at the items that I was purchasing like the way the other coaches were purchasing. And I'm like, this is crazy. I can get this stuff 30, 40, 50% cheaper. I'm like, I'm buying catcher's gear out of this magazine for full retail plus and paying ridiculous shipping. I was like, shoot, I can outfit my backup catchers with used gear. They hardly ever catch. It's not that big of a deal. I was like, I'm going to start buying on eBay. And they had no system in my school to, you know, you got to get a PO. I'm like, okay, I got to get a purchase order to buy this thing. This is insane. I'm going to spend double the money sometimes on some of this stuff because of some arcane rule. It's just dumb. And so they worked in systems where I would purchase the stuff with my money and show them the records and get reimbursed for it. And we saved a ton of money selling or buying on eBay. And we'd also sell some stuff on eBay for the team as well, and that would go into the pool of money. So it was just one of the things that we did, but it went to my mindset of, look, we're trying to find the best deal out there. And to me, debt was not an option. And that was even presented to me by people. I'd be like, we don't have a batting cage. You know, how are we ever going to be a good baseball program and we don't have a batting cage? And they were talking about financing and doing whatever. I'm like, this is nuts. We literally had a garage sale to help pay for that batting cage. This one's kind of a hard one to carry in, but I think I can get it done. I've got used to carrying a camera in one hand and showing stuff in the other. I'm trying to remember. There's 2 sales I could have got this from, but I think I got this one from a sale on a Sunday on the way back from the beach. And I was so shocked to see a Sunday sale. It never happens. And I would have paid next to nothing at this sale. It was the 3rd day of a family-run estate sale. Cooper's Works. That would be Fenimore Cooper, I believe. At any rate, this set right here sold for $101 and change plus shipping. That's the kind of set that makes it worth it to me. And people don't read like they used to. You know, it's gone down a little bit lately. A lot of people have trouble selling books. Book sales are still good on eBay, don't get me wrong. But these kind of things I've always been attracted to, mainly because of what I found in that social studies storage room, to be honest with you. I found a set of The Rise and Fall of the Confederate Government, or The Rise and Fall of the Confederate States. And it was early 1900s, and I'm like, man, that thing's awesome. I can't remember what we got for it. I want to say it was like $700 for it. And I wanted to make sure. I went and checked with the light. Those things were discarded in the 50s into the social studies room and sat there for 50 years. And so I went and took them back to the library. I'm like, this is a discard stamp in this thing. And they're like, oh my gosh, we haven't seen that and whatever. And I'm like, and so I can have it? And they're like, yes. I'm like, sweet. Like, how about these two? The Letters, Papers, and Speeches of Jefferson Davis. And that was from the 18-somethings. I don't even know. Obviously, probably 1890s. And I'm like, whew. And those sold for like $400. So even though readership is down among the populace by a little bit, you know, I still look for these kind of things because people use them for decor. And Airbnbs are a huge thing. I've sold so many old books just simply because they're old books. And I see a lot of people pass them up, and I pass them up all the time, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not selling that set of books for $40. It's just, they're heavy, they take up space, they're slow sell through. But for that one, it's probably been 11 months since I bought it. But to me, that's well worth it. I guarantee I paid like $5 for that set. And I sold it for over $100. And books are not hard to ship. They're heavy, but they're not hard. All right, I'm finally going to dig into this topic. Let me pull this last one and we'll dig into this debt question. And there will be people that disagree, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But this is Applause Star Wars. Danglers. I bought this over on Dibdib, believe it or not. And these sold for $29. I think I did anyways. 29 bucks plus shipping. So this video I'm watching, and the gentleman's like, you know, you can't live your life afraid because you'll never succeed. And I agree with that. Matter of fact, I always, you know, faint heart never won fair lady. I say that all the time. Fortune favors the bold. And I gave an example on that podcast the other day too, of when I actually took on debt, and I'm standing in it right here. But there are times, I think, where debt can be strategic, that can be helpful. Obviously, not most people can't, you know, buy a house without any debt. I still owe on my house. And there have been times where I take out loans. But it's never crossed my mind, you know, when you see the eBay stuff like, oh, you can qualify for a $15,000 business loan or whatever. That to me, boy, you better be sure. And if you're going to resell like I resell, for goodness sake, it just makes no sense whatsoever. Now, I think, you know, if you're trying to do something reselling-wise that requires a building or space, it's a different story. Now, if you want retail space or a warehouse or something like that, you know, personally, I would try to figure out a way, or at least even if you're going to lease or rent or something, to have a long-term plan where you can own something. I've talked about Goodwill actually doing this. You've seen them leave retail spaces where they have leased before and bought property and bought buildings in order to proceed. And it's going to give them a leg up, because if any of you out there have retail spaces, you know, you can't control that stuff. Sometimes you get the boot. Sometimes that, you know, okay, your lease is up. You got to go higher and higher and higher, and it gets out of control. That's not necessarily debt. But I could certainly see putting strategic debt into a property that you're owning in the long run. I could certainly see that. Most of the time you buy property, you're not going to lose if you hold it long enough, although that goes back to my childhood a little bit. My folks struggled with debt, and they were not overspenders. They just got caught in certain circumstances. So there are certain times where you need to do it. But if you're going to be a reseller that's not like a massive growing business, it just makes no sense whatsoever to go in debt. It just doesn't. I had a teacher. I hated school when I was a kid for the most part. I loved certain things about it and certain teachers. But I remember having one teacher I really enjoyed. I didn't like school till I was like a junior in college because you got to take the classes you wanted. And I had this teacher, he would always say it: to borrow from the future to pay for the past is a sure way to make poverty last. And of course, I have the proverbs that I read all the time. The borrower is servant to the lender. To me, it's not just about the strategic, let's call it amplification of your business, the growth of your business and taking on debt. It's the mental stress that goes along with owing people money. I've had resellers that I know tell me if I just had $10,000, I could really grow this into something that could support my family, and they're contemplating a loan. And I'm like, that is just, I'm sorry. I wouldn't do it. Polo Ralph Lauren, if $10,000 is going to be the difference between success and failure and taking on that debt, then good grief, figure out a way to make $10,000. I know some people it's hard, but I'll give you an example here. Polo Ralph Lauren white denim, 25 bucks, I think. $25.95 for that one. Plus shipping. I told this story before about this particular shed that I'm in. And this isn't necessarily only about reselling. It's also about social media. When I started this thing way back when, I was incredibly blessed and fortunate to have a ton of series of events that really helped me out, including people that were supportive of me in the reselling business and in the social media business. I told one of those stories on that podcast. And a lot of them have, a lot of these events just were, I just look back on it and it's like, how in the world does this happen to me? Thank goodness it did to me. And thank you all for watching. But there was a couple of times where I was faced with a decision to, when opportunity knocks, am I going to open that door and take a financial risk? And I did not do it. And I don't regret not doing it. It gave me the mental stability and mindset to be able to push forward in a responsible way. But one time I did this very building, I financed this building. But I didn't finance it out of just I just need this and it's going to put me over the top and it's going to do whatever. It was strategic, and it had to do with that Enderman right there. If you don't go back all the way back on this channel, or on the Picker channel, I should say, I bought those. I've bought those for years, and these things. First one I ever bought was one of these, Fleet Enema Company. The Fleet used to be based out of here. It still have a couple buildings downtown, but they were bought out, and they had these plush, and you would find them around here because that company was here. And I would sell them for, 10, 12, 15 bucks, whatever, something like that, because it's a cool little novelty. Who wants a plush enema Christmas ornament kind of thing? People would buy them slowly. And I found some of those in an antique shop down there, Dirt Road Treasures in Bedford, Virginia, and they had a basket of them for $3 a piece. And the gentleman there bought them at an auction and whatever. And I was like, hey, $2 a piece, I'll buy the whole basket. And I knew I could sell them for $12, $14, something like that. And it's like, multi-quantity, I could make some money. And I put it up. This is the same time I started filming these episodes. And somebody bought it. I wish I knew who you were out there because I owe you a lot. And put a comment in that says, I hope this gets my eBay store moving. And every single time after that, I literally put the camera down and I went down to that store. I said, you got any more? And he's like, I have a lot more. And I bought thousands of them, and we've sold them over the years. And that's all that we have left, actually, right there. Inside, I don't know. I think I have the blue ones in there. We sell those on CommonwealthPicker.com, our editions of them without the trademarks on them. And I told my wife, because she knows how I feel about debt. She doesn't feel quite the same way. She's not afraid of it like I am. And I told her, I was like, listen, I'm going to get this shed and I'm going to finance it. I said, but it will be paid off in 6 months. And she's like, oh, really? I was like, yeah. I said, every single time I sell one of these Enaman, I'm putting all that money aside and it's going to go towards this thing. And that's what we did. And there were days, if you go way back, where we were selling 15 to 25 of those things every single day. And we were selling them for 15. We raised it to 20 and we kept selling. We raised it more. And then we started auctioning them off. And they were going for hundreds of dollars. Now they're down, I don't know. There's a lot of people that got them already. So down in the 30s, I think. But we still auction them off for fun every now and again. But I've always wanted to keep some. So my point in saying that is, I'm not saying there's never a time. But to me, it has to have a clear strategy for how is this going to pay for itself in a very short period of time. JYD's been around for a while, a fully articulating junkyard dog. I paid $1 for it over a year ago, and I was like, you know, I don't care if that sits in my shed for a long time because I like JYD. It was one of my favorite. Thump on the back, and it was only a $10 sale, but I'll take it. And he's going to somebody who will appreciate him. And that was $10 plus shipping. But, you know, I have known people who have taken out a $5,000 loan, even from a family member or something, to make a big purchase that was an opportunity purchase. And they have enough discipline to pay that first $5,000 back to that person really quickly and stuff like that. So I'm not saying there's never a time. But, you know, I don't want to get into exactly everything that I saw on these social media here because I'm not trying to make an issue. But to tell somebody do not be afraid of debt, debt is what propels you forward in business, is somewhat true, but for what we're doing, it just is silly. It's silly. I think it's foolish with some exception. So tell me if you agree with that in the comments below. We'll discuss a little bit more as I pick. This turned out to be a pretty good buy. These portable percussion massagers turned out to be a really good buy, actually. I was scared. I think he wanted $20 a piece, and there was 8 of them. And I did not want to pay. I think I paid $15 a piece. Because I'm like, looking at sell-through rate, I'm like, I don't see a great sell-through rate on these. But daggone it, they're all gone. So maybe I was mistaken. I did sell them at or below the market on these guys. And I wanted them gone pretty quick because I had a little investment into them, $100 and something. I don't know, 120. I don't know what's 15 times 8. You can figure it out. 120 bucks. There you go. I got it right. Surprise. And these are selling for $60 a piece. And 2 of them sold in lots. One in a lot of 2, and this one sold not in a lot, but they bought all of them. So this was $180 plus shipping. And so that'll give you an idea. This would have put me in the profit if this is all I ever sold. And then the other 5 would have been profit. So that turned out to be a pretty good deal. However, that was at Dave's brick sale, and I didn't see the brick. So, but I'll take it. I'm going to put in a brief interlude of the sales that sold last year. Well, they sold 2 days ago, and I had to ship them yesterday. I didn't put them on the last video on accident. So we'll throw that in here, and we'll get back to it. And we'll keep talking about debt and some personal things, and I'd love to hear your personal stories out there. Whether you took on debt and it was the best thing you ever did for your business, or whether you avoided it and it's the best thing. So I'm not being critical. I know there's different circumstances for everybody out there, but I do think this is a discussion worth having. And one thing that I did long time ago, and I'm going to talk about that, and I think it's a strategy that a lot of people can employ today if you're trying to grow your business. All right, y'all, you got to forgive me here. I've got to throw these in the middle of this video because I missed them on the last video, and I got to ship them out a day early. So this is a brief interlude of 4 or 5 items that sold that I missed. Don't get scared, y'all. These are actually things that I don't have to ship out. They're not late. It's just I missed them, and I'll have to ship them out today for them not to be late. Sold 2 more of these, y'all. These have sold way quicker than I thought they would. $59.99 plus shipping, $59.99 plus shipping. We're doing pretty good on this deal. Not nearly as many in here as there used to be because I didn't get that golf club head cover buyout at the Lost and Found sale this year. They actually donated it to a charity that raises money for younger golfers and stuff. So that's cool, at least. TaylorMade M4, $10.46 plus shipping. Thought it was a little dark in here. I didn't turn that light on. And it's very overcast outside. The Lego chess set. This is, again, came from Chris the Goose. And we bought a bunch of stuff from him down there in Tennessee. This one sold for $70 plus shipping. So not a bad little one right there. It is opened. It's not brand new. But I think a lot of the pieces were still in there. Like, obviously all the pieces, but a lot of them were still in the package. So, you ever find the Lego chess set, brand new seal, they go for good money for sure. $69.95, I think, plus shipping. Sold a couple of these. Haven't sold these in a while after WrestleMania went by. Gotta wait till next year's WrestleMania, but we sold a Sting and a Goldberg. Hey, I have an empty drawer. I gotta use that for something. Got a Goldberg, WCW, NWO mask, or not mask, skull cap. Whew. That one doesn't want to open. And I don't want anything to fall off of here. I got down a little lower, it was easy. So those two sold for $16.42 plus shipping. And I see this one is a viewer, Matthew. Seek and distribute. Okay, I like it. Where to start? Wife and I watch Picker, Commonwealth Picker channel. If you don't watch that channel, go check it out. I listen to Flipper as I travel throughout the day. That's pretty typical. I'm a Smoky Bear, West Virginia State Forester. That is awesome. Started the eBay on trial basis to see how I would do, and at the end of September 24, once the sales began, I set a small goal of 100 sales and hit that just after Christmas. So new goal is 30 a month. First 3 months of the year, hit those and a few extra. Then April hits and we hit 70. Today, setting at 357 sales. Today, setting at 357 sales since I started. I'm hooked. Thanks. Thanks. Shout out, Seek and Distribute. I like it. That is an awesome story. Maybe some of this applies to you. And let's keep the conversation going. Appreciate it. So all the new folks out there, and I'm curious what you do, is the first suggestion I always make is to make that separate bank account immediately. Immediately make that second. You don't have to have an LLC and all those things. You just have to have a separate bank account for bookkeeping purposes and get my Reseller Genie. But I wouldn't even suggest doing that until you've really scaled and you know you're in it for the long haul. Code Commonwealth, 15% off first month. But I didn't use that for a long time. So I'm just trying to be funny here, but it really is a great tool. But what I did from the get-go was when I would sell an item, it was reimburse the cost of the item. This was the beginning stages. Reimbursed if I paid, $10 for an item and it sold for $50. Let's say there's a $30 profit in there just to make the numbers work. $10 would immediately go back into an operating account. Go back in there. And 10%. So 10% of that would be 50. It would be 10% of the gross sales price, not the shipping. And so I would get 15 back in. So I invested 10 into the item, and then 15 would go back into my operating budget on that particular type of sale. And then the profit that was left, I would pay myself with because we needed the money. My wife wanted to go to the beach, and I was a broke teacher. And so we would sell stuff, and that's what we would use that stuff for, and make sure we weren't going in debt and all that kind of stuff. But that little decision of reimbursing 10% is what allowed me to have money in my pocket when I would go out and source. Because money in my pocket was sometimes an issue. You want to go out and source at a garage sale, and there's no money to go out and source at a garage sale, then you have no opportunity to make money. And I did that from the very, very beginning. I eventually changed that system over to just a percentage of the gross that came in. And my operating budget today, y'all, if you saw my and a lot of it has to do with the success of social media, but I've taken that same principle that I've always had with a percentage of the money that comes in and put it in an operating budget. It's overflowed twice where I've now taken that money, which is far more than I need to source, and put it in a savings account, business savings account for me, and it's actually making money. That's the opposite of, paying interest on debt is crazy. You're far better off to push yourself to the excess if your family life can handle it in order to avoid that, because you can get to the point not only where you don't have debt, but where your money is making you money. And to me, all the advice out there in the world is fine and dandy, but I've seen way too many people fail at it to ever suggest that people do that. Now, if you're the type of person with incredible discipline and responsible and whatever, you know, you might be able to take that on and it might propel you to amazing things. But for the other folks, you kind of got to get lucky to make it work. And I can tell you right now, if you know YouTube, if you have a channel or something, they tell you the likes and dislikes on your video. This will be a low... I hope I didn't mess that up. I didn't. Thank goodness. It's pretty low dollar item anyways, but I still don't want to mess those up. It is a Lego van, a little London bus out there. This didn't sell for much, but, you know, it was worth listing, I suppose. It's not the kind of thing you sell live, but this one sold for $7.16 plus shipping. Not big bucks, but somebody's got it at a good deal, and I'm glad they got it. But I say that this video will get a lot of thumbs down, and that's fine. I know that going in, and it's perfectly okay with me. There'll be a lot of people that say, well, you're on social media, and you're making money now, and you're doing this. Let me tell you, I would, if just never doing any social media at all, with the system that I had as it built, I had a good chunk of change. When I first started, it was like I would scrounge together the dollar bills I could find in the house and the quarters, and I'd put them in my pockets, and I might have $100 going out there on a Saturday, and then it turned into $200. Then it turned into $400 I would go out with on a Saturday. And then I was like, okay, this is working, because I would have that discipline and do the little accounting it took to make sure in a separate bank account that's where it went. And now, if I came across a $10,000 buy, I don't carry $10,000 with me at yard sales, don't get me wrong, but I could make that happen that day. And it's not because of social media. I would be at that point right now regardless, because I would have maintained that system. I've changed it a little bit just for bookkeeping purposes, but I have a max amount in my operating budget where if it hits that point, I put it in a totally different account. And that actually is an interest-bearing account, because it's stupid to have, you know, tons of money sitting in an account that you're not even using to operate. But I've used that account on bigger purchases as well. Like I just bought a trailer that I use with a friend of mine and I have a little connection with, and we've used it multiple times already. It's paid for itself by this point, which is kind of neat. Plus I actually have that asset right now. Owning, that's the other thing. What are you putting debt into? Are you putting debt into something on a lease, for goodness sake, or something like that? Makes just no sense to me. If you're going to put debt into something, it should bring back more dollars than you're spending to finance the dollars that you borrowed. I'm really going to get in the weeds with the next thing, so I better do this before I forget. This was a gift that was sent to me, Wesley. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I'll just let you look at that really quick. There's nothing on there I shouldn't have. I don't know. But thank you so much for that, and I just wanted to say that really quick. And this as well, incredibly nice. It's been sitting over there forever, and I keep forgetting to mention it, so I thought I would do it right here. Good Energy, the surprising connection between glucose, metabolism, and limitless health. I have not spoken much about my health, but people read into a few things, and this person read it correctly. So thank you for that book. I'll check it out for sure. And somebody sent me this flag, and I don't know who did it, but they're like, your flag needs replaced. And I replaced it since you sent it, because I had another one. But this will be the next flag flying out there on the Commonwealth cabin. This was not a Hall of Fame buy right here. I've had this for over 2 years, I believe. Subaru Outback floor mats. $5 at a sale. I picked them up, didn't comp them or anything. I'm like, these would be good. Well, they stunk. But they sold on deep discount for under $20 plus shipping. 2 years, 5 into 20. A lot of space. Not good, but they're gone and we made a little bit of money. I actually know a gentleman, talking about assets, you know, and not depreciating assets. Although my trailer is a depreciating asset, I suppose. You know, there are tax considerations too, and some people are like, oh, I take out this debt so I can pay on this so I can tax write off, and that makes no sense to me either. But there are some things. This guy, he makes a lot of money doing what he does. And it's sort of ish reselling, but it's sort of not. And he buys tons and tons of stuff. I'm like, what are you doing with this stuff? He's like, I'm just sitting on it. I'm like, why? He's like, because I want more cost of goods. So I pay far less right now while I'm making this much money, because in the future, I'm not going to do this thing that I'm doing and I'll pay far less taxes on those things. I'm like, In other words, he wants to be a reseller when he retires from doing something that's connected to reselling. I'm like, okay, I think I get this right here. And so I'm not saying there's never a time to buy and store, but when you're starting out as a reseller and you're depending on that income, and it's not a good idea to go out and spend for a year on inventory before you start reselling. I think that's kind of silly, and I hear that all the time. But let me know, maybe that's you, maybe that was a strategic plan. I do know one person, they sell live, and I met him in Tennessee that did that. They bought purposefully for selling in a certain niche, live selling, and they wanted to have enough inventory. But this person seemed very dynamic, very disciplined, and had the resources to do it. So there's always exceptions to the rule, and you'll see comments. Just read through the comments in this video. You'll see comments that are critical and that don't see what I'm saying right now. There are always exceptions to almost every single rule, and everybody's circumstances are different. But generally speaking, the advice I saw on this video was just like cringeworthy, because I've seen so many horror stories, and I've seen them personally in my life. Avoid it at all costs. At the same time, when opportunity knocks, sometimes it takes some strategic capital to make sure, but you better be 100%, because if you're not, you're putting your own psyche, your own family life in a predicament that might break down the things that are truly important in your life instead of just dollar bills. Members only jackets are my weakness. I have a hard time passing them up. And for $2.50 a piece, I bought a boatload of them last year in Carolina at a highway sale. And this is an off-white one. And it sold, but it took a long time. But we only have like one left from that sale, made in Hong Kong. And it sold for $24.95 plus shipping. I have a softness because a friend of ours, when I was growing up, he's since deceased. He would wear members only jackets just like this all the time. And he would pull the sleeves up and play golf in it and stuff. And I just remember it fondly. Same gentleman, by the way. That was a smoker. But I think I admired him so much and thought so much of him that, I don't know, subconsciously in my mind, I guess, I clung to those two things as I aged. He's also the guy I've talked about who owns the grocery store, who really taught me a lot about experiential buying and product placement, which is why I decided when I did this shed, I would not only buy this shed on credit, but I knew I needed money not to just buy a shed, because I had close to the money to buy the shed, but I knew I have no skills in building or anything, that I wanted something that could aesthetically increase experiential buying based on product placement. I'm giving away my secrets here, but that's why the shed looks the way it does, and I can't build anything. That's why we divided it into a storage area and a display area, which I've got criticism for, but hey, you know, I'm proud of the fact that 20% of our sales go to viewers. I'm proud of the fact that when I go live on these live selling sites, that people want to come see my shows. And oftentimes it's the criticism you get. Well, you got a following, so you could do this. It's like, okay, I'm sorry I have, you know. So I'm proud of those things. And all those life lessons that I was growing up, I tend to learn those life lessons not in school most of the time. And I think they've served me pretty good so far. Speaking of experiential buying, if you're over there on any of the Dip marketplaces and you see me in the chats, I'm always in the chats talking to sellers and stuff. I don't buy a ton. But man, when sometimes there's a good seller selling good things in there and there's not an audience, because sometimes there's just not an audience. Time of day, news stories coming out, all kinds of stuff. This was super cheap. It was a Yellowstone blanket. And I had already bought a few things. And I'm like, it's only going to cost me a couple bucks and a couple dollars shipping. I can get it for $4 because I had already got that progressive shipping. Like, I bet I could get $20, $25 for that. Well, I didn't. But I got $21 for it. So I made a little profit, and they got a sale that day, and I was happy with that. I'll take it. I've got to go, boxes are getting me, back here in the ET bin and grab a couple out of here. This may be, I'm going to say thank you to Gillette. I don't know that this is a viewer sale, but there were 2 items that sold together. And so we only read one comment today, y'all, just one. But I have a suspicion out of our 21 sales today that at least 2 and maybe up to 4 are going to be viewer sales, which would put us close to that 20% number. I got to find the right ones. I might bore you. If I can't find it quickly here, then I'll... maybe you want to look at them. I don't know. Here's all the different types. Shout out to Ivan. That's one of them. I'm looking for the ET earrings. There they are right there. There's the 2. I'll grab one out of each bag, and I'll leave this sitting here so I won't bore you too long. These sold. These are on 25% off right now. So that one sold right there. And this one sold right here. I think just around $10 total for these 2 plus shipping. So thank you to Gillette if you are a viewer. If you're not, thank you anyways, even though you're not going to hear this. I'll take that sale. All right, I got the AC on back there. Sorry, it didn't bother you. Reagan has not been on in a while, but she's here today with the sale at CommonwealthPicker.com. What do you got?
Jessica got a CWP mug.
Jessica got a CWP mug right there. Thank you very much for that purchase, and we appreciate it.
Bye, and don't forget to get your stickers at CommonwealthPicker.com.
All right, I know I've made a few people angry, and a lot of people disagree with me, and people will say, well, you probably listened to that Dave Ramsey guy, and this and that, and this is why this is wrong. I have these discussions with my oldest son, who is very responsible, very good with money. He does not necessarily agree with me about no debt, like, for instance, for a car. And I don't take out loans for cars, for instance. And even though I could, and I just don't. But for the most part, it's good to have the dialogue and discussion, because as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another, or a woman. And I love to have those debates and discussions, so that's what we're doing here. You don't have to agree. You can definitely disagree down there in the comments. But I like to talk about this topic because I think it informs some people. And sometimes I learn something new in the comments as well. So thank y'all for joining us. And I can't wait to see you next time.